Thank you very much for listening to these short Hagadah thoughts uh, as we approach the extremely busy time of Pesach. And I'd just like to share this idea that I heard in a talk from the journalist Sivan Rahav Meir. And she talks about freedom. Pesach is the quintessential chag festival of freedom, Zman Chayroseinu, the time of our freedom. And there are three different types of experiences that that we are reliving over the Seder night, over the whole Pesach holiday. And these three experiences are first, experiencing freedom through food, and then secondly, experiencing freedom through giving, and thirdly, experiencing freedom through speech. And we find this very much, all of these themes woven into the Seder night especially. So starting first with the food, very glorious food. And while we enhance, celebrate every Shabbat, every festival with the specific foods that we associate or that are particular to that festival, Pesach is, the Seder night especially, is bursting, absolutely bursting. And the first food, the food that is associated with Pesach, the food of matzah, and this special type of bread, unleavened bread, and the symbol of the matzah is often associated with the complete lack of ego. This is humility at our starting point of becoming a nation. As we leave Mitzrayim, we leave Egypt, we are not just throwing off the shackles of our slavery and going into hedonism and arrogance. We are starting off from this most humble point with the most basic bread, which is matzah, just flour and water, cooked so quickly, precisely 18 minutes. And this is something that every single time and challenge has found its particular story of people who went to extraordinary lengths to procure matzahs in times of great suffering, and would have been extremely difficult, but they still managed somehow. One hears of these exceptional stories, and Sivan Rahab Meir was actually interviewing the widow of Eli Cohen, the Israeli spy who was in Damascus, and just before the Six-Day War, he was actually in the top echelons of the Syrian government, and while he was masquerading as an Arab and having access to all of this very sensitive information that was going to prove crucial to the Israeli war effort in the Six-Day War. It was Pesach, and he walked past a Jewish shop, and there were some ladies inside there, and they told that somehow this story got relayed back to Eli Cohen's widow, and he went in there innocently, in inverted commas, and he asked them what they were eating. They were eating matzah. And he said, "Oh, let me taste that." And he put that in his mouth. And he was obviously on borrowed time, living a hugely dangerous existence. And he still had that urge to try to sample matzah on Pesach. This is something that is a really integral part of our Jewish life. This concept of eating matzah as the commemoration of the liberation from our slavery in Egypt. And we see that the theme of food runs through the Seder in copious amounts. We've got the fact that we dip twice. This is mentioned in the Manishtana. This is a symbol of wealth, and that partly through the various traditions that are associated with food, we absorb the contradiction of the themes of the Seder night through the food, through the drinking, and we can appreciate this aspect of freedom that we're part of becoming uh, a new person after being a slave, is that we are able to take our food, and we don't have to wait to be given our food from a human master. And this is something that we, on the one hand, have moved on from that time, yet on the other hand, we still very much remember the experience of the slavery, and we don't just leave it behind. And so the duality, the sort of the different directions that we're being pulled in with, on the one hand, food that reminds us of freedom, on the one hand, food that reminds us of slavery. And we've got the custom of the drinking, the mitzvah of drinking the 4 cups of wine, which is a symbol of wealth, to have wine in these copious amounts. And we've also got the law that says even someone who is very poor needs to have these 4 cups of wine. So all of this is really using the medium of food and drink, is a way to show us, to really get us to internalize physically, and also looking at the symbolism of these various types of foods. We really are experiencing freedom in this way. And in a way, the most important part of the Seder, which is the 3 paragraphs that we say, Pesach, Matzah, and Maror, and that is towards the sort of the end of the Maggid section. And all of these 3 things are foods. We point to the we don't actually point, because we don't have the Korban Pesach, but we mentioned the Korban Pesach. This was how we were going to at the time of the vesameach, we would bring this particular korban, and then we point to the matzah and we point to the maror. All of these foods, all of these integrating physical and spiritual to really give us this lesson of freedom. So this is the first association that we have in the Seder night, a way we experience freedom through food. And sort of as we live in different times, and perhaps have different challenges, and always we come back to the basics. We look at the Seder night, we look at what these foods are meant to represent, and how they impact on us, and how they can enable us to experience the true freedom that we can achieve on the Seder night. The second type of experience of freedom in the Hagadah that we find is this concept of giving. And again, this is something that a free person, and we can say a free person in his head, because there are examples of people who have been slaves and still been able to rise above their particular circumstance and think of other people and share their meager rations with other people. But most often, when somebody is in that terrible situation of being enslaved, that their head is filled with their own survival. And when people are very, very low in any sort of way, it is very hard for them to actually think about somebody else, think about giving to somebody else. And in order to do that, you have to be free. As I said, you can be free in your head. Even somebody who is in a prison, who is in a very difficult situation, can still think about somebody else and achieve that freedom. But it is so much harder. And so we have this idea expressed very early on in the Seder, when we say, which something that seems to be a very empty invitation, if you like, that we, at the very beginning of the Seder, we say, let everybody who is needy, let them come in and join in our Korban Pesach. And at this point, we are sitting round the table, and we're saying these words to ourselves. Where is the notice in the shul, in the synagogue, saying, will guests please contact hospitality? we get this from the very beginning of the Maggid section, the Holach Ma'anya. And the question is often asked, it's not a sincere invitation. So I think it's actually making this point. And it's particularly relevant when we think about the Korban Pesach, the Paschal Lamb, because the law of the Paschal Lamb was that everybody had to already be sorted. They had to be in their family groups. You had to know where you were having your Paschal Lamb. And if you were not a group that was sufficiently large to have one on your own, you would then join with another group, but it would all be organized ahead of time. So what I think that the point of this 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 mention of inviting is to establish a culture, is to we are beginning the Maggid section, we are talking to our children, and we are saying, okay, in this situation, actually it's not going to be something that is going to happen real time, that we are going to be in a position to invite guests, but this is part of our culture. Hachnasat orchim, welcoming guests into our home. This is really an integral part of our lives. So every Shabbat meal, every other festival meal, ahead of time or spontaneously, we are going to make sure from the fact that we say it at Seder night, which is our nation night, Seder night, which is the night where so many people of all different persuasions, of all levels of religious observance, they are going to be gathering together and having a Seder. And so there we have the broadest audience possibly that we will ever have. And we say very strongly that this is our way of life. It might not be actually happening on this particular night for various reasons, but kol dichvin yeseh v'yechol, everyone who is needy, we want to have a home where they are welcome to come in. Kol ditzrich yeseh v'yivsa, everybody who needs should be able to come in and join in our festivals, our family meals. And so I think that in this way, we are experiencing freedom when we are able to do this, when we are able to think about giving to others, and we are able to share what we have with other people. That is the sign of that somebody who is blessed with the right attitude, and sometimes with the quantities that they are blessed to have, but actually it's not necessarily the quantities, it's not necessarily those with more who give more, but it's this generosity of heart that whatever I have, I'm willing to share, and in so doing, spread that joy, spread that blessing. And this is a cornerstone of our faith that is already being imparted at this point of the Seder night. Very important way of expressing freedom. And the third experience of freedom, again, in huge amounts throughout the whole of the Seder service, is freedom through speech. And we find that there are so many references to different forms of speech in the Seder night. We have the Hagadah, which comes from the root lahagid, the infinitive to tell, to relate. And actually, the Haggadah is not the actual tale of the Exodus. It's telling us how to tell that tale. If we wanted to read the events of the Exodus from Egypt, we would read the portions in the Bible in the Torah, from Shemos, starting with the Sedra of Shemos, Va'era, Bo, Bashalach, all of these Sedras. That is the story of the Exodus from Egypt. The Haggadah is telling us how to tell that story. This is a masterclass in education, in pedagogy, and so this is done primarily through speech. And it's ironical actually, because on the one hand we have in Pirkei Avos, in two places at least, this idea that less is more, that you should rather say less than more. And we have in chapter 1 of Pirkei Avos, Mishnah 17, we have Shimon, that he's the son of Rabban Gamliel Omer, Lo matzasi laguf tov mishsika, I haven't found anything better for the body than silence. And then in chapter 3, verse
Perek chapter 3, Mishnah 17, we have Siog Lechochma Sika, the boundary around wisdom is silence. So basically, the wiser you are, the more silent you're going to be. And in complete contrast to that, in the Haggadah, towards the end of the Maggid section, we have the idea that B'chol dor vador, okay, 1 second, B'chol hamarbe l'saper harei zeh meshubach, and this is whoever increases, whoever tells more about them, that they are praiseworthy. And so this is something that seems to fly in the face of what I just said, that it's supposed to be silence is golden. And it is very much the unique opportunity on the Seder night to dwell on the fact and how to tell that fact of our exodus from Egypt, how to transmit that to our children. And this is V'higadat levincha, and you shall explain that to subsequent generations. And all of this is just really showing us in this freedom to express ourselves in this way, which again, when we look at other times when we haven't been able to express these thoughts, these sentiments, and the freedom to speak about our delivery, our deliverance from Egypt, the freedom to believe and to dare to hope. And I think that this is how we are using our gift of speech on the Seder night. And this is possibly the consummate way to use our gift of speech on Seder night. And I would actually just like to conclude, I promised this would be brief. I'm going to show you an excerpt. This is a very beautiful Haggadah. It's Haggadah's Hamikdash, which is the Temple Institute, and it has very beautiful illustrations and sources. And it ends with this picture of the redemption, of this discussion. It's a quote from the Gemara in Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, and it's called Ayelet HaShachar, which is the dawn, and it compares the deliverance from Egypt, that this is the Geula, this is the redemption, speaking of the past redemption and the future redemption that we pray for, that we are going to be able to celebrate the holiday of Pesach exactly in the way that Hashem wants us to, with all of the various halachot that we are not able to observe today in the absence of a Bet HaMikdash. But this concept of dreaming, of daring to hope, and it is through expressing it and through talking about it and sharing this information with everybody around us, that even though we can be in very dark times, that this is the part of the message of what happened in Egypt, that at times you would have never been able to dream that it could happen, that it was so dark, it couldn't possibly ever get lighter. But that is the point of the dawn. Before the day breaks, the night is at its darkest, and then you have a crack of light, and then it gathers pace. And this too is like the Geula, and this is the message of hope. And this is how we express it through our speech, and the speech of the Haggadah, which is so meticulously planned on the one hand, yet everybody has their particular their way of understanding it, their way of transmitting it, and learning. The important thing about this, the freedom to talk about it, is the freedom to add, to think of something new every year, that is a new way of looking at whether it's a passage or a particular word in the Haggadah, to find that and home in on that. and think to yourself, I'm going to add something to my repertoire and transmit that and speak it. So just with these few ideas of how we experience freedom in the three ways. Freedom, firstly, freedom regarding all the various foods and the customs surrounding foods at the Seder night. Especially, we have the matzah, which is going to carry us through the whole of Pesach, and then we have the freedom of the experience of giving, how that is something that a free person can do with a full heart, and then the freedom through the words that we are using, through the way that we bring the Seder to life in our own situation, and always adding and finding something new. Thank you very much for listening. Wishing you chag kasher vesameach.